Now we are going to look at how to add a grade item and associate it with your assessment. So we are in the same assignment, which is untitled, which Dave has already showed us how to add these expectations to. And now what we're going to do is take a look at how to link this assessment with a grade item in the grade book. So right now you can see that the grade out of says ungraded. So that means that this assessment is not graded, right? You're going to be able to provide feedback to the student, but not actually assign a grade to it. So if we assign a grade to it, we're going to grade it out of points, number of points. So let's say we want to grade this out of 20 points. So here, notice the default option says in gradebook. As soon as we add 20 points, it says in gradebook. So what's going to happen now automatically, or the default setting is that this will create a grade item in the gradebook, but it will be uncategorized. So it won't show up in any categories. It will show up at the end of all of your grades in the uncategorized area. So first of all, let's take a look at what happens when we do that. So if I click save, and then we go to our grades tool into the gradebook and we look at the end all the way over here. We see now that it's not in a category, and here is the grade. If we look at that in managed grades, you'll see that down at the bottom, not within any of the categories is untitled, and it is now linked to an assignment. So notice this column says association, and it is associated with an assignment. That means that we won't be able to delete this unless we either get rid of the assignment or remove that association. So now, if we want to either link this to an existing grade item or create a new grade item within a category, we are going to go click on this down arrow and go to edit or link to existing. So if we wanted to link this to an existing grade item, we would just use this drop down and select whichever grade item we'd like to choose. So let's say we created the grade item ahead of time in the gradebook, and now we wanted to link this assignment to it. This is how we do that. Or if we wanted to create and link a new grade item, we would click here, and then we would see we need to choose a category. So we could leave this as uncategorized if we wanted, or we could assign a category. Let's say it's LS1, and let's change grade type and scheme. So let's right now leave this as a numeric grade item, and our default grade scheme will be percentage. So if we click OK and then save, and then we go back to our manage grades screen, we will see untitled appear under the category LS1 here. And if we go to enter grades, we'll see then that there is a column for untitled within the category of LS1. So now if we go to the assignment screen, we can start to take a look at how we're actually going to assess this based on the settings that we just had. So if we look at untitled, we see that we have one new submission. So if we click on untitled or the name of our assignment, we will see all of the submissions. We see that Toby here has submitted this file. If we go here, it's going to take us right to that file to assess. If we click here, it's going to take us to an evaluation screen where it lists all his files, and we will be able to select which one we want to assess or which one we want to look at. So the assessment applies for all files, but we might want to take a look at all the different files as we assess. So we click on that. We're now going to get his submission, which is I definitely did this work all by myself, right? It's a doc file. So we assess over here on the right-hand side. So if all we had was simply a grade that we wanted to enter for him, we could put the grade here. So let's say we give him 18 out of 20. Any other feedback we can provide here or using the annotation tools, and we're going to look at that in way more detail later on in the series. So if all we had was a numeric grade associated with this, this is all the input we'd need in order to get it in the gradebook. So we also have attached expectations here though. So let's say that we had these expectations attached. We're going to see them below. If we didn't have any expectations, we wouldn't see them here. But in this case, we do. So if we wanted to evaluate these or give him feedback on the specific expectations, we would just be able to level this. So for each of these expectations, we could go through specifically and give him different levels. And then those levels will be associated with those expectations in his progress. We're going to show you how you can track that progress, the expectations progress, a couple different ways, and how Toby's going to see that later on in this series, but not during this session. So to publish feedback, we would click on publish. And what that means is that it's going to save your feedback, and Toby is then going to be able to see it. If we go save draft, it's going to save all the work you just did for assessing it, but it's going to keep it unpublished so that Toby won't be able to see it. And then we'll be able to publish it at a later date. Sometimes teachers prefer to do all of the assessment for all of the assignments, save them all as a draft, and then when they're done, publish everything at once. For now, we're just going to publish this for Toby, though. And it says the evaluation is published. So now if we go back to that enter grades screen, we can look here, see Toby untitled, and we gave him 18 out of 20, so that's a 90%. Because our grade scheme we chose was percentage, it's going to display as a percentage. All right, and then it'll give you a link that if you wanted to go back and view his submissions right from this page, you could do that here as well. So now what we're going to do is show you how to create an assignment so that you are still giving a numerical grade, but that numerical grade is generated by a rubric. So you're going to attach a rubric to an assignment, assess using that rubric, and that rubric's going to generate a numerical grade for that student. So let's call our assignment Untitled 2 for a second assignment here. We're going to switch this to grade out of. So here, if we go grade out of, and let's put, say, 10. Okay, so whatever we put here is what it's going to be graded out of in the grade item in the grade book. All right, so again, let's create a new grade item in another category. So let's make this an LS2. In that category, change the grade type and scheme. We're going to keep it numeric at this point, and it's going to be percentage. Again, the scheme is how it's displayed both in the gradebook and to the student. And the grade type is how you're going to input it. So we're going to input a numeric grade, and it's going to be displayed as a percentage. We'll show you some of the other options in a minute. So I'm going to click OK. So the difference that we're going to do here is we're going to attach a rubric. So if we go over here to evaluation and feedback, and we go add a rubric, you can either create a new rubric here or add an existing one. Now we have an existing rubric we've created for demonstration purposes here. We're going to go through the process of creating rubrics and how you do that in a subsequent session in this series. So if we click add existing, we'll select our sample rubric and go add selected. So if you want to see what's on the sample rubric, you can just click this arrow and you'll see all the criterion. And you can see that this rubric is actually out of 20. So you assign points to each of the criteria in a rubric, and these actually total to 20. So the rubric's going to generate a score out of 20, but notice we made our grade item out of 10. So it's going to automatically adjust. This grade item, this rubric gives a score out of 20, but it's actually going to adjust whatever grade the rubric gives to make it out of 10, and you'll see how that works in a second. So we're just going to save this and take a look at what it looks like when we go to assess a student. So now if we go back to the assignment screen, we see that we have a new submission. So let's click on the assignment. Again, it's going to show us a list of the students that have submitted work. In this case, Pam has submitted something. And this time I'm just going to click right on the file, and it's going to open that file directly in the evaluation screen so I can take a look at that when I'm assessing. So it's going to load the file here, and we'll be able to see what she submitted. And I definitely did this work all by myself. It's a little suspicious because that looks exactly like what Toby submitted, but that's okay. For demonstration purposes, I guess we'll leave it alone. So on the right-hand side now, you'll notice instead of just having this overall grade like we had last time, we now have this rubric. So now when we go to evaluate this, we don't just see this place where we can enter the overall grade. We also see this sample rubric. So if we want to assess this now, we're going to go through the rubric. So we can click on the rubric itself, and it'll bring up the criteria. So notice here, would be a level 4, 3, 2, 1, and level R. Now, again, you can put more levels. You can do this differently, and we'll show you how to set up rubrics later on. But for now, we're going to give him a level 4 for this criterion, level, let's say 2 for that one, and a level 3 for that one. So notice it automatically generates his total score of 17 out of 20, which is a level 3. Okay, so once we have this done and we have this score of 17 out of 20, we look down here and see, well, he got 8.5 out of 10 because this is what we made the assignment out of and what the grade will be in the grade book. So then, even though the rubric gave him a mark of 17 out of 20, the overall grade is 8.5 out of 10. So now that we've published it, Toby can now see that, pardon me, Pam can now go see that feedback. And now if we go back to the enter grade screen in our gradebook, we can see for Pam that Untitled 2, that assignment, she has an 85%. And again, that was auto-populated from that assignment. Now, let's say that we also wanted to evaluate expectations for this assignment. We could go back into the Edit Assignment screen, click on Expectations, pick whichever ones we'd want to assess, and then click Save, and Save and Close. And then when we go back to assess Pam's work, we notice that we've already given her the mark from the rubric, but now down below we have, again, the same thing where it looks like we can evaluate these expectations based on levels. So we can give her these levels and then make it so she can now see it. And then not only is she going to have a numerical grade generated from a rubric, but she's also going to have feedback on each of the expectations. So we're going to do one more example of an assignment. And this time, we're not going to make it a numerical grade item. We're going to make it select box or levels. So it's going to be called Untitled 3. So if we want to make this a select box, first of all, we'd still have to change this to grade out of, and we'd have to change this to how many points. So even if it's a select box level, it's still going to be worth so many points within the gradebook. So let's make this out of 10. And now what we're going to do is create a new grade item. And let's put this in LS3 for the category. And we're going to change this to select box. And so our grade scheme is level plus minus. So what that means is we will still, in the background, have a numeric grade out of 10. But what we're going to see is the level plus minus. And how we're going to grade this is the level plus minus. Again, this is how we're going to input the grade with the grade type, and how we're going to see the grade in the gradebook is by the grade scheme or level plus minus. Okay, so level plus minus is how we're going to see it. We're going to click OK. And I'm going to change the way that the assignment's submitted here. So submission and completion. Notice here we have a file submission selected right here. There's some other options. It could just be a text submission, an on-paper submission, or observed in person. So let's say we just had them submit something on paper. We could select that. But what I'm going to select for this one is observed in person. So the students aren't going to really do anything themselves with this assignment because everything they're doing is going to be done in class. So this is great for like a blended learning situation. But for us, we're still going to make this an assignment and evaluate them using all of those assignment assessment tools, which we're going to look at later on. But we don't have to wait for them to submit anything. We can just do this as we observe it. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close. So now when I go to assess this, I'm going to see a list of all of the students. And I can just pick which one to assess. So if I say want to assess Creed, I can go to evaluate. So on the left-hand side, it's just going to say observed in person because that's what we did, right? He didn't have to submit anything. But for the overall grade now, I can pick a level. So let's say Creed did really well. We'll give him a level 4 minus. Again, we can put any of our feedback or here, but I'm going to click publish now. So again, if we go back to our enter grade screen, we see Creed here. And if we scroll over, we see this untitled 3, which is that assignment we just did with a level 4 minus. So up until this point, we've just shown you how to do this with assignments. I'm going to show you now how to attach a grade item to a quiz or a discussion. So if we have a quiz, notice we have a quiz created here when we go into our create quiz tool. And if we want to add a grade item, we're going to edit that quiz. And notice this screen looks different, right? Assignments has a new view that we use to create assignments and edit them. Edit quiz still has like the older style view, so it looks a little bit different. So here we're going to go to assessment. And this is where we're going to associate the grade item. So if I go to grade item here, right now there isn't one. So I could pick an existing one, or this is where we're going to create a new one. So you'll see a similar screen to the assignment one. So we're going to go the office quiz. And we're going to select our category. Let's put it in LS4, and we're going to say it's out of 10 points, okay? Again, we can do the scheme. We could pick any of these, but I'm going to stick with the default scheme. So again, this is how it's going to be displayed in the gradebook. It's going to be displayed as a percentage, and we're going to click Save. So now if we go back to the Enter Grade screen, go over to our LS4 category, we see TOQ, or the office quiz, and then as students submit and their quizzes get evaluated, the grades will be auto-populated here. So you can also associate a grade item with a discussion. You can grade or assess students' discussion posts. So notice here we have a topic called Week 1. And if we want to talk about how we're going to assess that, we'll go Edit Topic. And this looks more like the quiz situation where we have these just options up here. We're going to click the Assessment tab. And again, we're going to score out of 10. We can change that if we want. Again, you could add a rubric here for the same way you did with assignments, but we're just going to show you how to do a numeric grade. We're going to create a new grade item. It's going to be called Week 1 Discussion. I'm going to put this, let's say, in LS1. Again, we can have all those same options we had before, but I'm just going to click Save and then Save and Close. And now in our Manage Grades screen, we see this Week 1 discussion here. Now, if we go back into edit that discussion topic, and we click on the Assessment tab like we did before, we get this same screen. Notice we've already added our grade item. But at the bottom, under this Posts heading, it says Allow Assessment of Individual Posts. So let's say there's this discussion topic, and there's multiple posts by different students. So there's like a discussion going back and forth between two students, or one student's posted multiple posts. You can give one grade based on all of their posts, or you can actually assess each of those posts individually. So that's what this checkbox is for. So if we allow to assessment of individual posts, we can calculate their mark. It's still only going to be one mark that goes in the gradebook, but we're going to use all of those individual marks for all of the individual posts in order to generate that mark. So we have to select a calculation method. So for example, we could do the average post score. So if there's 3 posts, you assess them all, it will average that, and that's the mark that goes in the mark book. You could have the maximum score on a topic post. You could have the minimum score on a post. You could do the mode post score. Highest on multiple simply means if there's multiple modes, meaning that one mark occurred 3 times and that was the most, but there was also another mark that occurred 3 times. Whichever one of those is the highest mark will be recorded, or lowest on multiple is whichever one is the lowest will be recorded, or you could just simply add up all the post scores. So you can choose how you want to generate that one grade that's going to be added into the gradebook. The last thing that we want to show you in this video is how to exempt individual marks for individual students. So let's say that a student did a quiz and there was a learning goal on that quiz, and then on a test there was the same learning goal and they showed improvement in that learning goal. So you might want to drop the mark on the quiz. There's lots of reasons why we might want to drop marks for kids or exempt them for certain marks. So what we're going to do is show you how to do that here. This is similar to an EDSB. If you were to click on an individual grade in their grade book, it would say drop from average. So that's the same idea as these exemptions. So there are two ways to do it. You could either go through and exempt multiple students from a single grade item, or you could drop multiple grade items for a single student. So first of all, if you wanted to pick one grade item and exempt into multiple students, you would click on the individual grade item on the down arrow and go enter grades. And then here, notice there's exempt or unexempt here. So for every student that you wanted to exempt, let's say we're going to exempt Creed and Pam. From this grade, we would click exempt. And notice now the scheme says exempt. Now their grade, it looks like it goes away, but it really doesn't. It's still there, we just don't see it. If we clicked unexempt, it's back. If we clicked exempt, it's exempted. So we go save and close. And then when we go back to the gradebook, you're going to see that word exempt appear on for that grade item for those two students. Now, if you wanted to do multiple grade items for a single student, you would just click on the down arrow for their name, go to bulk edit exemptions, and then we're going to get a list of all the grade items for that particular student. Notice that the one we've already exempted is checked. Let's say we wanted to exempt another one, we'd check it, go save and close, and now there's a new exemption for Pam. Thank you so much for attending our second session. Our next session will contain things like creating and attaching rubrics, assigning custom feedback to rubrics, and using expectations to evaluate and assess. Look forward to seeing you in session 3.